Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Ty. Our guest today is Andrew Antos, CEO and co-founder of Klarity. In this episode, Andrew shares his journey as a founder, insights on AI's role in accounting, and what the future holds for automation in finance. Now, our host, Jotham Ty.
Andrew, welcome to the Accounting Life podcast. Thanks for joining us. Very first time. I know we've known each other for a while, so glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jotham. I'm really excited.
I'm excited too, Andrew, because you get to answer questions about two topics that I know is most popular in our pod, which is one, you being a founder and people wanting to know more about the journey, and then two, AI. There's not too many players in the accounting space that do AI right, and I think you guys are definitely one of them, and I think which is why we've bonded so well over the last few years. So we'll get to AI in a second, but why don't you tell us more about Klarity, how you got started, like what the passion is behind solving the accounting problems that you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're an AI company based in San Francisco, and we help accounting and internal audit teams, right? And what we do is basically we have two products. One is it automates creation of documentation, like SOX narratives, SOPs, BRDs, all the documentation that you need to actually run your business and work with auditors. The other one, it automates all these large-scale processes that involve documents, right? So all of your transactional processes, expense receipts, contracts, invoices, orders, POs, all of that stuff. And this all started 8+ years ago now, actually, almost 9. It's going to be 9 this summer. And I think I had this core insight, which was there's every profession, whether it's accounting, whether it's legal, whether it's engineering, whatever you can think of. People gravitate towards it because there's joy that they find in the work at the very heart of it, right? And in accounting, it might be creating journal entries, or it might be creating revenue waterfalls, or it might be creating actual, policies, and then writing your technical accounting memos and all of that, right? But every profession at the same time, at least in the modern world, has all this other stuff that you have to do that's actively detracting from the joy that you can get from actually doing the profession. And one thing that we realized was it's all about the documentation. Documentation, both creating documentation as well as dealing with documents, is the frustrating part for accountants, because accountants want to work with Excel, they want to work Google Sheets, they want to work with ERPs, they want to do the actual accounting, but you have to do all this documentation around it, right? Accountants are usually great with numbers. And so that was kind of the core of the insight. And I actually am not an accountant, or I wasn't an accountant. Now I feel like I am an accountant, but I was a lawyer. But I saw it, when I was working with all these big fours, and so on, and I saw the pain the documentation is bringing to them. So that was the start of the journey.
Well, Andrew, first of all, and I've shared this with you directly, you are. You've got a badge of accounting that I think is well deserved. I know we share the same networks, and my accounting leadership friends all agree that what you're doing for accounting and the passion you have behind it through Klarity has been incredible, and we're seeing that, and we appreciate it. So you're definitely an honorary accountant at the very least, definitely more. So yeah, you've got that badge of accounting honor there. Second thing I'll circle back on is I think a very important point. And I could speak to this as an accountant. There's parts of the job that we really enjoy: putting together analysis, being able to produce, certain types of complex journal entries based on applying business rules. But we don't get to do that because we're so stuck with copying and pasting into the spreadsheet, writing tedious memos, things that automation should be able to do for us. So I kind of think about it as, I know we've also talked about music before. We don't have to go into the details, but I think about a musician, right? Instead of practicing, time and time again, musicians just, maybe just enjoy playing free form or performing in front of other people. So there's probably, I was trying to draw a relationship there. I think I'd probably drop that.
No, but I mean, like you're right, right? So I think like this, by the way, applies kind of across the board. So like I think there are kind of like two key points, right? So even for musicians, right? Like there's like big parts of the job that they don't enjoy, like booking the meetings, like or playing somewhere, and like they enjoy the actual music, but like all the logistics around it kind of sucks, right? And I think like that's the same, and I think that's the theme that we're seeing in the AI space right now is like all the applied AI companies that are doing well, what they're doing is they're refocusing the people in that profession on what they actually love about it. And they're taking away like the boring or the frustrating parts of the work, right? So one thing that, like, for example, we've been seeing a lot is we deployed Cursor and a couple of other tools for our engineering teams. And they're really excited about it because like they can actually spend more time building and less time just like writing code, right? Which is like a big difference of like actually thinking through like what do I want to build? How do I get started? And so on versus just like having to write like one line after another and and do that part of it. And I think like with accounting really like I think it comes down to work with numbers and kind of like this like strategic like conceptual work on how do you think about the business, right? Like whether it's like writing my revenue policy, like how do I actually think about like representing my business from a numbers standpoint, and dealing with the actual numbers. And then the interesting thing is like if you actually think about like day-to-day operations of an accounting team, especially like a large scale corporate accounting team, there's so many operational things. One is like, I need to write a lot of standard operating procedures, right? Just to make sure that this thing is done consistently. That's super frustrating. That's why we build the architect. Like you can take a video walkthrough, you just record what you do, and you build an SOP and you build a narrative out of it, and you build whatever you want, process flow diagrams, like all of that stuff that like takes so many hours. And people actually are not that particularly good at it either because like you don't do it like all day long, right? And then the same thing with our other product. It's just like, well, I'm a revenue accountant. I want to be thinking about like, okay, how should I account for this transaction? I don't want to spend like 5 hours reviewing, a 100-page MSA and trying to find like the termination for convenience and acceptance clauses there. And so like the way we really think about our business is like, how can we take care of all the document related problems and bring joy back to accounting?
I love it. I love it. And as you were describing all that, I'm kind of going back through time. And one that like stood out for me was, and I don't know if I shared this with you, Andrew, but I started with SOX and providing SOX services.
Yep.
Big part of that job is like having meetings with different business leaders and accounting leaders to ask about the process. Let me tell you, the fun part was not like documenting it on, Microsoft Word and like typing out paragraphs and paragraphs on. It was like learning about the business and trying to get like operational context and then strategically pinpointing like risk points in that process. Like that's a part I enjoy, not the drafting stuff. I was going to use another term, but thankfully I held myself back on that. So I think, clearly there's definitely a strong many strong use cases to apply AI across like different accounting processes. But, truth be told, we are not the most, sometimes as a profession, we're not the earliest to adopt maybe new technologies. So, I want to maybe hear about some of the typical objections that you hear from the field about adopting such capable and strong technology like AI.
Yeah, totally. So I think like we're still on the very early parts of the adoption journey, right? Like, and I think it shows kind of across the board. I think from my standpoint, the trick is always to actually know what you want, right? And when I'm talking to customers, I always ask like, what is your number one priority? Not related to AI, but like, what do you want to achieve to the like with the business, right? Like, why are we having this conversation in the first place, and what do you really want to do? And oftentimes it comes into something like, we want to scale without adding additional headcount, or it's like we want to increase efficiency, or we want to increase margin, we we had a, God forbid, material weakness, and like we need to have better controls around something. We really care about getting complete and accurate data for every single transaction, right? Or I want to run my business better, so I want to find what are the problems in my processes, like are there any gaps, or are there duplicative processes that we don't need to be doing that leads to frustration. And so just like really like understand what people are actually trying to achieve from a business standpoint. And that's like the number one thing that usually helps with doing absolutely everything. And so what I always find is like the really meaningful conversations are the ones where it's like, yeah, we have this objective, this is what we want to achieve. Is there a way AI can help us achieve that or not? Like sometimes, it's something that where AI just doesn't make any sense. And so like really being clear on what you want to achieve, like that seems to be number one. Number two is being clear about kind of ownership. What we're finding is that every company or every team, or sometimes there's like multiple people on the team that have that, but have a couple of these like early adopters, like people who really want to get going. It's like the last time, I've seen similar patterns is like when iPhone was first released, right? You had your friend who had, iPhone early and they just like couldn't shut up about it, right? And so it's like, that's the same thing with AI. We see these patterns of usage where, we might sell to a huge company and they're using, and there's like 5 people who are using the product like 50 times a day. And so identify who's that on your team, who's the like tinker, who's like excited about like getting their hands dirty and really like understand technology and like wanting to really like move it to drive business outcomes. Yeah. And then the third thing I think is like not being afraid of it, right? Like it's I think so much of accounting is just like understanding where material risk is coming from, right? Whatever part of it might be. And so think about your initial AI deployment somewhere where you're not afraid of like material risk. It could be like we literally have customers who just start like, hey, I just need to generate all new SOPs and maintain all new SOPs automatically for my team just so I have better training materials. It's probably not like a material risk, right? So you can start there. You don't have to do like a multi-million-dollar 5-year transformation, of your operations. And so just start small and win big.
I think those are really 3 good points, and I'm going to recap this for our audience. The first being just like knowing the goal. What are you trying to do with AI? Just defining that is important. 2, getting some early adopters like excited, and that iPhone example is perfect because I had a few popular friends who kind of just like distributed that knowledge to the rest of our crew. And then thirdly, just starting with some place that is not as controversial or risky. In accounting, we can find that place left and right. So yeah, just not being afraid of it and just like going out and trying it was one of like the best advice that one of our investors gave me when this ChatGPT emerged. He's like, don't try to overthink it or don't try to have it change your world tomorrow. Like just play around with it, do something non-critical and just get yourself immersed in it. And I think that led to my pretty quick evolution there. So yeah, I love those 3 points, Andrew. And I think you and I are seeing and hearing this on the ground. Like I think the guidance that you provided hopefully helps more accountants like just really look at this, because when they do get hands on that power, I think it's just so incredibly valuable to an accounting organization. I know part of like the objection sometimes with SaaS in general and like automation in general is like not the right time, right? Like in the middle of a quarter end close and another year end close and then an ERP implementation. So yeah, how do you go about advising customers or prospects, like how to find the right time to incorporate and start adopting AI?
Yeah, totally. I think that the really interesting thing for us is, so, we moved from a 1 product company to a 2 product company last year. And so my answer a year ago would have been vastly different from what it is today. But basically, we have these two products, right? So one that helps you document, and one that helps to automate the document processes. The one that helps you document things requires no implementation, requires no integrations. They're optional, but like they're not required. And like you can literally get started in a matter of minutes, and you can just upload a video or have our AI interview you and say, show me your AP process and walk me through how you're approving invoices and so on, and just build that documentation in a matter of minutes. And so what I found is like before, the other product is much heavier, right? It's extremely powerful, but it's much heavier. You can take, I have, 100,000 orders every year or 10,000 orders. And like, how can I make sure that all of them have complete and accurate data in all my systems without touching 90% of those, right? It's that powerful, but it requires like 3 to 4 months of implementation work and getting your auditors, on board, and like all of this other work. And so I think like what I realized is really it's like the world is like a menu, right? And you can look at all these different tools that are, whether it's Klarity or non-Klarity, and pick the ones that are actually pretty lightweight, that can deliver ROI immediately, right? Or that can deliver the right type of ROI for you based on those goals that you're setting for your business, right? And so that's the type of discussion that we have a lot. It's like, yesterday I was in this like big industrial Fortune 500 company meeting in the Midwest for like 5 hours, right? And their goal is to get 30 to 50% reduction on finance and accounting expense. Well, the architect can help them, but like it's not going to drive that much ROI, right? Because it's pretty lightweight. What they need is like this massive transformation. Is like, we need to automate all of your AP and expense receipts and order to cash and so on. It's like a heavy project. But like, if you have the magnitude of the goal that justifies that, that's the right move. Versus like, if I just like, yeah, I'm really busy and so on, and I need to move the needle a little bit, I need to get started on my AI journey, you have something lightweight to start with. And that's kind of how I think about it. It's like really like introspect on what you want to achieve, what you need to achieve, and then kind of like pick your journey.
That got me thinking about our own like, product roadmap strategy. And I think it's just like really strategic. I think, of course, a lot of accountants are looking at your solution, and this might be the first time. This probably is the first time adopting AI. So having architect, lightweight way of just, again, like getting exposure to it and seeing what it can do can then open the doors to the larger transformation projects that are going to make a big impact to their business.
Totally. And it's the same thing as like with iPhone, right? Like when you first get your iPhone, you didn't like start with like, I'm going to install 100 apps and I'm going to like order all my food online and I'm only going to take, ride share, and I'm going to, I don't know, like hunt Pokemons and like all of that thing, right? Like that wasn't the first thing that you've done. It's like you got that thing and you're like, oh, I can like just, okay, maybe I can play like Angry Birds, and it was just like, it's like a little bit of a ramp. And I think that's the same thing with AI as well. It's like, you need to get started somewhere. And so get started and like learn how it works. What are the advantages? What are the shortcomings? Like learn how to work with it, because it definitely like the thing about AI that is always really difficult to grasp until you start working with it a bunch is this strange combination between it being extremely valuable and extremely like powerful in getting work for you, but at the same time not being perfect. I always think about it as like you basically have this like junior associate, that has like 1 year or 2 years of experience that does work for you in real time. And so the fact that they're doing the work for you in real time is extremely valuable. At the same time, you cannot expect, perfection. You cannot expect it's like, hey, this is a 25-year Big Four partner that has all the wisdom and has seen everything. And so like, and that's such a weird new paradigm that you just need to like experience it and learn how it feels.
Yeah. And I think it's important, to your point, for accountants to have that expectation that 100% accuracy with anyone or anything in this world from a practical standpoint is not achievable. So not to be surprised by it. In fact, I had, also kind of like a moment of, a slight issue with like a communication so I have Claude trained to answer investor questions. I'll tell our investors.
I want that. I want that. Can you?
Oh gosh, yeah. I'd love to show you what that is because it has effectively answered questions for me. It's kind of like a temporary CFO for me right now.
Now, when I text you, I don't know if I'm texting Jotham or if I'm texting Claude.
Texting is me right now, but if you see videos, I would ask those same questions. So I introduced a couple AI generated videos of me for trainings and so on. But hey, it's folks like you that are kind of encouraging like people like me to try it, and then whether it's for accounting if it starts in accounting, it has a way of just like opening up more of the world to you of AI and seeing all the cool things that it does. So that's why at Gapify we have so much love for what you guys are doing at Klarity, and I think you're not only helping accountants' lives and become more joyful. Oh, I almost like used a political expression there. Make accounting joyful again. We should do shirts, matcha.
Yeah. Let's not get into that.
Yeah,
but no, but I agree. It's like, and ultimately, I think like it always comes back to for me, it's like there's joy in every profession, right? And I think like your example of like how you're actually using Claude to answer investor questions is like you probably are not like the reason why you're a founder, why you're enjoying running your company is because like you're building product that helps your customers, right? And it delivers like real value. You're probably not enjoying like answering 100 questions about your financials, right? And so that's why you pick that specific use case. And I think like that's exactly right. Like I use so much of AI to, I'm not gonna name the specific products, but like to do a lot of like things that I don't necessarily enjoy about my work that give me kind of superpowers if I do them, and so I can focus on the fun parts of building a company.
Wow, it's so similar, right? Like for you and me, there are certain parts of our CEO job that we don't enjoy as much. So AI gives us now like tools and the ability to do less of it. And yeah, Andrew, we've talked about this before. I know one thing that you and I enjoyed, it's just like getting out and talking to customers, and whether it's participating in implementations or sales calls. And I, haven't really measured this, and I bet AI can help me do that. I would say that the number of customer meetings and prospect meetings I've done, like the increase quarter to quarter must be 40+% because I've been able to like have AI do more of my, my new like day-to-day stuff, and I go out and talk to customers more, which I enjoy.
Exactly, right. And there's nothing better than to like sit down with somebody and just be like, okay, like what are your problems? How can we help you solve them, right? Like that's ultimately why we're doing this, right? And so I couldn't agree more.
So as we wrap up here, Andrew, two last questions for you, and just to kind of crystallize everything that we've talked about here. Like, what's one amazing like success story that you've seen at Klarity, and then two, what's your prediction for AI in 2025?
Let me start with the first one. That one's much easier. We got like some pretty major wins with the architect recently. We have actually one Big Four is actually a customer now.
Wow.
On it, they're using it internally, and they're seeing 80 to 90% time savings out of the gate within a month of using it on creating documentation at a scale of thousands of hours per month for their teams. So that one is a really big win and like very fast out of the gate. The other thing is now is like I think it's just the sheer volume of the work that we're doing with our customers, right? So we now have 58 out of top 100 technology companies in the world run on Klarity, and then many others in other industries, but like especially in tech, we kind of became the like market standard, and we're saving thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours to every single one of these customers. But even more importantly, they sleep better because they always get complete and accurate data, right? And like that's the core job of every single accounting team is to make sure that like ultimately our financial statements are complete and accurate. And so that's the thing, is like, I don't want to pick one because I think it's always relative, right? And I would pick one of the really big customers that we have, because like the numbers are going to be bigger than some of the small ones. But the actual impact on the company is the same, or sometimes even bigger. So that's why I'm kind of taking this like portfolio approach.
Impact to company and impact to that accountant's life and career is just incredible.
I think like on the second question, this is going to show how quickly this podcast is going to age. So you're going to have me here again next week to correct my predictions. But so I think like there's kind of two things, right? So one is, we're still, even with like, OpenAI O1s and O3 models, and the new model, the Gemini models from Google, and the updated models from the Claude models from Anthropic, we're still in the like fairly early life cycle of like, we just need more intelligence and better models, right? And if we stick with that like iPhone analogy, we all had that moment when like Steve Jobs showed iPhone 4 and we're like, oh, this is the only phone that you will ever need. And it's like, and this is done. And then it turns out like you had another decade of like massive, improvements in processing power and like displays and like all the stuff that the phone can actually do for you. We're still very early in that life cycle. And so we need better models. We need smarter models, right? So we need more intelligence. That's number one. And so that's kind of like the core thing that everybody is chasing. The other thing is, though, that's really exciting is just how quickly costs are falling down, right? Like for some of the models that we're using, we partially it's because of DeepSeek and other things, but we saw 12x, kind of like price reduction for the same amount of intelligence in about 3 months. And so we're having this like divergence between models are becoming rapidly more intelligent, especially with test to compute now, for reasoning models, and the costs like falling kind of exponentially at the same time. And so I think like basically our cost of intelligence is gonna, the amount of intelligence that we have and the cost of intelligence is gonna decrease significantly over the next year. So that's my safe prediction.
I mean, I think it's a good one, and cheaper, faster, stronger, I think is just gonna serve the world well. So
yeah.
And you mentioned coming back on the podcast, I'm gonna bug you about that, Andrew, because these types of conversations are always fun for me. And yeah, definitely good to have you finally on the podcast for the first time. Appreciate all the perspectives. I know our audience is definitely going to find it very valuable, and hopefully we can have you back here again soon.
Thanks so much for having me. This was really fun, and hope we can do it again. Hope I get invited again.
Of course, fun times as always, Andrew. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Jotham. Have a good one.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.